I am Mirakai, 28, and literally last weekend, my role as the family's overlooked daughter backfired. The $18,000 engagement ring I worked my butt off to protect, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called happy dinner. My parents, always Team Ryan, straight up demanded I hand over my ring to fund his Miami trip, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You just ruined us," Mom screamed, with everyone staring like I'd set the table on fire. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. My fingers trembled around the stem of my wine glass as I sat at the polished oak table. The same one we'd gathered around since I was a kid. The clinking of silverware felt like a countdown to disaster. Ryan, my golden boy brother, lounged across from me, smirking like he'd already won some unspoken contest. Mom and Dad flanked him, their eyes barely grazing me as they gushed about his latest promotion. "VP at 30, Dad boasted, his voice thick with pride I'd never heard from me. I shifted in my seat, the bandage from my recent surgery itching under my sweater, a reminder of the gallbladder pain I'd powered through alone. No calls, no visits from them. Just a get-well card from my fiancé David tucked in my purse. I'd always been the shadow in Ryan's spotlight. Growing up, my art awards, my late nights studying for my marketing degree, my hustle to build a career, they were footnotes to his football trophies and corner office. But that ring, a marquise-cut diamond David saved 2 years for, was mine. It was proof I'd built something real, something they couldn't touch. Or so I thought. As Mom leaned forward, her pearl necklace glinting, she said, "Mirakai, we need to talk about your ring." My stomach dropped. Her tone wasn't curious, it was calculated. I gripped the glass tighter, my knuckles whitening, and forced a smile. "What about it?" I asked, my voice steady despite the pulse hammering in my ears. Dad's eyes flicked to Ryan, then back to me. "It's just, Ryan's got this opportunity in Miami, a big one." The air thickened and I knew. This wasn't a dinner. It was an ambush. The ambush at dinner wasn't new, it was just louder. Growing up, I was the kid whose report cards got a nod while Ryan's touchdowns got parades. I remember being 12, clutching a blue ribbon from an art contest, my watercolor of a stormy sea pinned proudly on the fridge. Mom glanced at it, said, "That's nice, Mirakai," then spent dinner raving about Ryan's game-winning catch. My ribbon was gone by morning, replaced with his varsity letter. I sat there picking at my peas, feeling like a ghost in my own house. By 16, I'd stopped showing them my sketches, my grades, my anything. It wasn't worth the half-hearted good job while they planned Ryan's college tours. At 20, I graduated with honors in marketing, landed a job at a startup, and pitched a campaign that doubled our clients' sales. I called home, voice bubbling, hoping they'd care. Dad answered, distracted, said, "Great, honey," then shouted to Ryan about his new car lease. I hung up, staring at my diploma on the wall, the frame slightly crooked. Ryan's MBA acceptance letter got a framed photo on their mantle. My degree got a "we're so busy" excuse when I invited them to my ceremony. I started keeping my wins small, private, like secrets I whispered to myself in the mirror. Now at the dinner table, Mom's eyes slid past me to Ryan, who was scrolling his phone, probably texting about Miami. "Mirakai, you've always been so practical," she said, her voice syrupy with pity. Practical. The word stung like a slap. It meant invisible, unimportant, the one who didn't shine. My fingers brushed the bandage under my sweater, the surgery scar a fresh reminder of their absence when I needed them. David had held my hand in the hospital, his thumb stroking my knuckles as I woke up groggy. My parents, they sent a text, "Feel better." I swallowed hard, the memory of every ignored milestone stacking like bricks in my chest. Ryan looked up, smirking. "Still wearing that fake ring, Mirakai?" he teased, nodding at the replica on my finger. I forced a laugh, my heart racing. He didn't know. None of them did. That replica was my shield, my secret middle finger to their disregard. I'd learned early to protect what mattered, because they never would. The night before my surgery, I stood in my bedroom, staring at the replica ring on my finger. Its fake gleam a quiet promise to myself. Tomorrow, I'd be wheeled into the operating room, my gallbladder finally giving up after months of pain. David was out picking up my prescriptions, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the looming dread of the family dinner Mom insisted on hosting post-recovery. I tucked the real ring's key deeper into my sock drawer, my fingers brushing the soft cotton, a nervous habit. The dinner wasn't about checking on me, it was about Ryan. Always Ryan. Mom had called it a celebration, but her voice had that sharp edge like she was planning something. I paced, my slippers scuffing the hardwood, my stomach twisting, not from the surgery but from the certainty they'd pull something. I sank onto the bed, my hospital bag half packed, its zipper glinting, under the lamp. The invitation to dinner felt like a summons to a firing squad. I could already hear Dad's booming voice, praising Ryan's latest deal, while Mom's eyes would skim over me, her smile tight. I'd be expected to nod, to play the good daughter, even with stitches fresh under my ribs. My fingers curled into the blanket, nails digging in. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew they saw my ring as a cash cow for Ryan's Miami pipe dream. The replica was my ace, but the thought of facing them still made my chest tight. I glanced at a photo on my nightstand, me and David, laughing at our engagement party, his arm around me. That ring, the real one, was our future, not their ATM. I stood, smoothing my sweater, and practiced my smile in the mirror. Calm, unbothered, a mask I'd perfected. Tomorrow, I'd face the knife. A week later, I'd face them. The replica gleamed, a silent vow. They wouldn't break me this time. The family dinner hit like a storm I saw coming but couldn't dodge. I sat at the table, my stitches tugging under my blouse, the pain a dull reminder of the surgery I'd faced alone. Mom's crystal chandelier threw light across Ryan's smug grin as he cut into his steak, talking about Miami like it was his birthright. Dad nodded, his fork poised midair, hanging on Ryan's every word. I sipped my water, the glass cool against my palm, trying to shrink into the chair. "Mirakai, you're so quiet," Mom said, her voice laced with that fake concern she'd mastered. Her eyes flicked to the replica ring on my finger, quick but deliberate, like a hawk spotting prey. I forced a smile, my lips tight. "Just tired," I said, shifting so the bandage under my blouse stayed hidden. Ryan leaned forward, his tie loosening, and tossed out, "Still playing house with that ring, huh? When's David gonna upgrade you to something real?" His laugh was sharp, and Dad chuckled, not even glancing my way. My jaw clenched, teeth grinding, but I kept my gaze on my plate, pushing mashed potatoes into a neat pile. Mom chimed in, her tone syrupy. "You've always been so practical, Mirakai. Not everyone needs flashy things." Practical. There it was again, their code for less than. My fingers twitched, itching to twist the ring off and fling it at them, but I didn't. The replica was my secret, my shield, and I wouldn't let their barbs crack it. Dad cleared his throat, setting his knife down with a clink. "Speaking of practical, Mirakai, we've been meaning to talk about opportunities." His eyes met Mom's, a silent signal. My stomach lurched, the air suddenly heavy. I knew that look. They were circling, ready to pounce. I pushed my chair back an inch, the legs scraping softly, and braced myself for what was coming. The dinner table felt like a courtroom, and I was on trial. Mom's fork hovered over her plate, her eyes locked on me with that calculated softness. "Mirakai, we sold your ring," she said, her voice steady like she was announcing dessert. My heart thudded, but I kept my face blank, fingers curling around my napkin under the table. "It's for Ryan's Miami deal," Dad added, leaning back, his tone final, like I had no say. Ryan smirked, cutting another bite of steak, not even looking at me. "It's an investment, Mirakai. You'll get it back someday," Mom said, her smile tight, as if I should thank them for robbing me. The replica ring sat heavy on my finger, its fake sparkle a secret they didn't suspect. I swallowed, my throat dry, and set my fork down, the clink loud in the silence. "You sold my engagement ring?" I asked, voice low, letting the weight of their betrayal hang. Mom's eyes flickered, just a hint of unease, but Dad doubled down. "Ryan's deal will set us all up. You've always been so selfless." Selfless. The word burned, a twisted compliment for years of being trampled. My stitches ached as I straightened, my hands flat on the table to steady myself. They thought they'd taken everything, my future, my love, my worth. But they'd sold a $200 fake, not my $18,000 ring. The real one was safe, locked away, just like the strength I'd buried under their expectations. I didn't speak. I let their words pile up, their justifications spilling like wine from a tipped glass. Ryan finally looked at me, his brow raised. What, you're mad? It's just a ring. My lips twitched, not with a smile but with the edge of something sharper. They had no idea what they'd just stepped into. The dining room's silence shattered when my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with "jeweler" in bold. I excused myself, my chair scraping as I stood, ignoring Mom's sharp glance. Stepping into the hall, I answered, my pulse racing. "Mirakai, it's Mark from Diamond Vault," the voice said, clipped and urgent. "The ring your parents sold us? It's cubic zirconia, worthless. They're in deep trouble, buyers are threatening to sue." I pressed my back against the wall, the cool plaster grounding me as a grin tugged at my lips. My plan had worked. The replica had done its job, and now their greed was unraveling them. I whispered a quick thanks, hung up, and slipped the phone into my pocket, my hand steady for the first time all night. Back at the table, Mom was mid-sentence praising Ryan's vision, but her eyes darted to me as I sat. I folded my napkin slowly, deliberately, letting the moment stretch. "Something interesting just came up," I said, my voice calm but edged, like a blade hidden in silk. Ryan's fork paused, his smirk faltering, Dad's brow furrowed. "What now, Mirakai?" he asked, irritation creeping in. I leaned forward, meeting their gazes one by one. "The ring you sold? It wasn't real." The words landed like a grenade. Mom's wineglass froze halfway to her lips, Ryan's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" Dad snapped, his knuckles whitening around his knife. I didn't flinch. "You sold a fake. The jeweler just called. Buyers are coming for you, financially, legally." The air sucked out of the room, Mom's face drained of color, her pearl necklace suddenly too tight around her throat. Ryan shoved his plate away, muttering, "This is a joke." But it wasn't. Their betrayal had backfired, and I stood firm, my stitches aching but my heart steady, watching their world crack open. The dining room felt like it was collapsing under the weight of their shock. Mom's wineglass hit the table with a clink, her hand trembling as she stared at me, eyes wide with panic. "Mirakai, what have you done?" she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. I leaned back in my chair, the replica ring glinting on my finger, a silent taunt. "What have I done?" I repeated, my tone steady, each word deliberate. "You stole from me. You sold what you thought was my future to fund Ryan's fantasy. I just made sure you couldn't." Ryan's face twisted, his chair screeching as he stood. "You set us up?" he spat, his fists clenched at his sides. I met his glare, unflinching, my heart pounding, but my resolve ironclad. Dad's voice boomed. "Fix this, Mirakai. You owe us." "Owe them." The words burned, igniting years of buried rage. I stood, my stitches pulling, but I didn't wince. "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice low, cutting through their desperation. "You chose Ryan over me every time, my art, my degree, my pain. You took my ring, thinking I'd just take it. But I'm done." Mom's hand reached for me, her fingers grazing my wrist, but I pulled back, her touch cold and foreign. "Please, Mirakai, we'll lose the house," she pleaded, tears pooling. I saw the fear in her eyes, but it didn't move me. Not anymore. I grabbed my purse, the strap heavy in my hand, and walked to the door. Ryan called after me, "You're selfish." But his voice was hollow, a child's tantrum. I paused, hand on the knob, and looked back. "No, Ryan. I'm free." The door clicked shut behind me, the night air cool against my face as I walked away, their chaos no longer mine. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the engine a stark contrast to the shouting still echoing in my head. I pulled into our driveway, the porch light glowing softly, and saw David through the window cradling our daughter Emma, as he swayed gently. My heart unclenched, the tension of the dinner melting at the sight. I stepped inside, the warmth of our home wrapping around me like a blanket. David looked up, his eyes soft but searching. "How'd it go?" he asked, setting Emma in her crib, her tiny hands curling around her blanket. I dropped my purse on the couch, my shoulders sagging, and managed a small smile. "Exactly as I expected," I said, my voice quieter than I meant. He crossed the room, his hand finding mine, his thumb brushing my knuckles, the same gentle touch from my hospital days. I sank onto the couch and he sat beside me, close enough that our knees touched. "They sold the replica," I said, the words spilling out. "They're ruined, David," and I walked away. His brow lifted, but there was no judgment, just pride flickering in his eyes. "You did what you had to," he said, his voice steady, grounding me. I leaned into him, my head on his shoulder, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with Emma's baby powder. This was my family, real, warm, mine. Emma cooed from her crib, and I stood, lifting her into my arms. Her tiny weight felt like an anchor, not a burden. The dinner's venom, Mom's tears, Ryan's rage, they faded here in this room, with the people who saw me. David kissed my temple, and for the first time that night, I breathed easy, my stitches silent, my heart full. The next morning, my phone lit up with Mom's name, her 5th call since dawn. I let it go to voicemail, my thumb hovering over the screen, the kitchen quiet except for the drip of the coffee maker. David was at work, Emma napping in her room, and I stood at the counter gripping a mug, the steam curling around my fingers. The voicemail pinged, Mom's voice shaky, pleading, "Mirakai, we're losing everything, please help us." I deleted it, my jaw tight, the guilt I'd expected barely a whisper. For years, I'd bent to their demands, covering Ryan's debts, smoothing over their fights, thinking it made me the good daughter. Now their desperation felt like a trap, not a tether. I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking softly, and opened my laptop. An email from the jeweler confirmed the buyer's lawsuit was moving forward. My parents' financial ruin was real. My fingers paused over the keys, tempted for a moment to step in, to fix it like always. But I closed the laptop, the click final. I wasn't their savior anymore. I walked to Emma's room, her soft breaths filling the silence, and adjusted her blanket, my hands steady. My boundaries weren't just words, they were walls, built to protect this life, this peace. Later, when Dad texted, "We need to talk," I replied, "No, I'm done." My thumb shook as I hit send, but it felt right, like shedding a skin that never fit. I glanced at a photo on the fridge, me, David, Emma, laughing at the park. This was my line in the sand, and I wouldn't let them cross it again. The sun filtered through our living room window, casting soft shadows on the hardwood as I sat cross-legged on the floor, Emma giggling in my lap. Her tiny fingers clutched a rattle. Her laughter a melody that drowned out the echoes of my parents' pleas. David was at the kitchen table, sketching ideas for a community art project I'd pitched at work, a mural for the local park, a way to leave a mark that wasn't tied to their name. I'd spent years chasing their approval, trying to carve a place in a family that only saw Ryan. Now I was building something better. I tickled Emma's belly, her squeal pulling a grin from me, and I felt the weight of my own name. Mirakai, not as a shadow but as a foundation. I stood, setting Emma in her playpen, and grabbed my sketchbook, my pencil scratching out designs for the mural. Each stroke felt like a reclaiming, my art, my vision, my legacy. My parents' name, once a chain, was just a word now. I'd make it mean something new, something vibrant, through the life I was creating with David and Emma. My phone buzzed, another text from Ryan, accusing me of betrayal. I didn't read it, just deleted it. My fingers steady. The mural would be bold, colorful, a gift to a community that saw me, not a family that didn't. David looked up, his eyes warm. "It's going to be amazing, Mirakai," he said, nodding at my sketch. I smiled, my heart full, knowing this was my impact, my way of rewriting the story. Their ruin wasn't my burden. This, Emma's laughter, David's support, my art, was my triumph. I stood in the park, the mural's vibrant colors glowing under the afternoon sun, my hands still flecked with paint from the final touches. Emma babbled in her stroller, David's arm around my shoulders, his warmth steadying me as neighbors gathered, snapping photos and clapping. The mural, swirling blues and golds, a celebration of community, was my heart on display. Proof I could create without their validation. I'd spent years chasing my parents' approval, shrinking under their dismissal, but now, watching kids point excitedly at the wall, I felt whole. My worth wasn't in their eyes or Ryan's shadow, it was in me, in the love I'd built, in the legacy I was carving. I knelt beside Emma, brushing a curl from her face, her eyes bright like David's. The weight of my parents' ruin, their desperate calls, had faded to a dull hum. I'd stopped answering, stopped caring, because their chaos couldn't touch this joy. My ring, the real one, gleamed on my finger, no longer a secret but a symbol, of trust in myself, of a future I'd protected. I stood, my stitches long healed, and leaned into David, his hand squeezing mine. "You did this," he whispered, and I nodded, tears pricking but not falling. This was my peace, hard-won and mine alone. Have you ever had to break free from someone else's expectations, to choose yourself over a toxic tie? I did, and it wasn't easy, but standing here with my family and my art, I know it was worth it. So what do you think? Did I stand my ground enough, or should I have done more? Drop a comment below, share your story, I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more. This mural, this moment, it's my proof. You don't need anyone's approval to shine. You just need to believe in you.